Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sammy Haj Assad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, corporeal and non-corporeal listeners.
Greetings to everyone. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, thank you for trying something new. I will reiterate, Ben and I are a pair of automotive journalists, but more important than that, we're very good friends. Right, Ben?
Power of friendship, etc., etc.
Woo! Ben's work can be found all over the internet. In fact, Ben, why don't you just tell the people where to find your work?
Sure, you can find me at Motor Trend, at Capital One, and at Haggerty.
And that's pretty much how the podcast works. I mean, I say something, you clarify, right?
No, sometimes I just, my eyes glaze over and my brain stops working, and I rely on you to guide me back towards, I guess the term is sentience?
Yeah, exactly. Sentience, or at least conversational sentience in this podcast.
Conversational sentience sounds like the term that, you're watching a sci-fi movie from the 90s, and they're like, The model just achieved conversational sentience, and then it takes over and launches its missiles at Russia, and Russia launches their missiles at us. And
us in particular.
Yeah, in that room.
Yeah, just me and you.
It's just one missile after another.
Just me and
when
you.
When the dust clears, there's a massive crater. And
well,
No, I'm not done, Sammy. The plot of the sequel is taking the moon and pushing the moon into that crater to fill the hole in the earth.
All right,
I'm
you
finished.
hear this?
I'm finished now.
That was. I mean, I've had. Maybe you didn't know this, but I've had pretty much a tracker from the day one of our podcast about how long it would be until we spoke about missiles, and
or mentioned capturing the moon.
Yes, and now I've got to turn that off. So I'm sorry to hear that. It was a fun time while we lasted.
6 years since last mentioned missiles.
Exactly. It's been a while. In case people haven't heard where you can find my latest work, it's over at autotrader.ca, driving.ca, as well as Capital One's Auto Navigator. You can find all my fun features over there. And Ben's work is also over there. Did you mention Capital One, Ben?
I did. It's almost like you're the one who's lacking conversational sentience.
Uh-oh. I better prep the missile. We've got some cars to talk about this week. Actually, not really cars. We've got trucks to talk about this week.
The biggest trucks you've ever seen.
Yeah, not just normal, small, trucks that we've talked about in the past, like the Maverick or Ranger. We've got big trucks that are too big for doing truck stuff. Right, Ben?
That's right. Too big for almost anything, especially what they were designed to do.
I don't know. We've changed the benchmark. We've changed the goalposts of what these trucks are for. So why don't you tell me what you've been driving, and then we're going to talk about what they're used for, or what they used to be used for, and now what they're supposed to be used for, which is capturing the moon, I guess.
So you could theoretically capture the moon with this vehicle, I have no doubt. But it's so big the moon would see it coming and probably escape to the other side of the planet. That's no moon. I drove the 2024 GMC Sierra HD AT4X AEV.
Wow, honestly, my eyes glazed over after
the next 100 years. Shout out to BMW, best car name ever.
My eyes glazed over after you said 2500 HD, but there's clearly much more to the car than just those sets of numbers. There's a bunch of letters and alphabets and all sorts of things like that. 2500 AT4. What now?
You missed, so you're getting it all wrong.
AT4X.
Let me break it down to you.
Yeah.
A few years ago, for whatever reason, truck companies decided everyone was itching to go off-road at any moment, and that every single vehicle in a pickup lineup should include some type of dedicated off-road model. And then that further expanded to not just one dedicated off-road model, but like 2 or 3 sort of off-road models. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where, back in the 90s, when pickup trucks were becoming mainstream, getting to the point where we are now, where obviously pickup truck sales have always been strong, but really it was the 90s where they moved into daily driver territory for people who were not traditional truck buyers. And in that era, you could get off-road versions of the trucks, but they were pretty modest. Stuff like the Z71 package or the FX4 package, from Ford and Chevy were pretty much it. You know, you got maybe the shocks were tuned differently. You generally didn't get a different ride height. You might get, you know, some shielding for underneath for the belly pans for the transmission, the oil pan and that kind of stuff.
Little rock rails.
Skid plates. No rock rails back then. Like, it was still very modest. And flash forward to today where like that level of equipment doesn't even raise eyebrows. Like, you can still get it.
Yeah.
But it's not the kind of off-road model that gets advertised. Like, Chevrolet is not like Z71 anymore. Although if you do get a Z71 on some of their models, they put like a huge badge on the hood, like on the ridge of the hood. Yeah. And it's like super prominent. But moving past Z71, you have stuff like Trail Boss. You have the Tremor package from Ford, which is now available on everything from the Maverick to the F-250.
Yeah.
There's, come on, help me out here, Sammy. What else?
The Ram Power Wagon.
Power Wagon, which is an HD truck, but like,
is it not a Rebel?
There's a Rebel.
Either? Is the Rebel a 2500?
No, the Rebel.
There is a Rebel 2500.
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. There's a Rebel 1500. GMC has the AT4 and the AT4X, which is what I drove, which is like an even more hardcore thing. And a lot of this, I mean, some of this stems from what Jeep has done. They like, you know, Jeep made the Wrangler Rubicon, and then they made like the Extreme, what is it, the Extreme Recon or something?
Sure, Sahara and like...
No,
Rubicon.
Sahara wasn't really a hardcore off-road package, but like Extreme Recon, I think, was the first vehicle to put like 35-inch tires from the factory. That kind of thing.
Extreme Recon is not a term that I've ever processed before till now.
I'm going to look it up. I'm pretty sure there is a Rubicon Extreme Recon. Let's take a look.
Why don't they just
it's spelled XTREME. It has a 100-to-1 crawl ratio, 6-speed manual transmission. It's still available. Yeah. But anyway, the truck companies started taking their cues from Jeep, and we ended up with essentially an unlimited number of off-road combinations. I mean, and then, you know, even moving past, like, AT4X is kind of the Chevrolet equivalent of ZR2. The GMC equivalent of Chevrolet ZR2.
Right.
Where you get the DSSV shock absorbers and the extra ride height. And then, so my model, breaking all of this down, you get a 2500 series pickup. So this is a 3/4 ton truck, much higher gross vehicle weight. So you can haul more, you can tow more. But then you add to that the DSSV shocks, the ride height, and then you add there's like, I believe, some off-road driving modes. But on top of that, AEV, American Expedition Vehicles, they're an outfitter. They've partnered with GMC to give you like different bumpers, like steel bumpers front and rear with tow hooks, and you can fit a winch in there if you want to.
And AEV is stamped on everything. Like
it's all over the place.
You need to know. It's like the buyer is begging somebody to ask them
what AEV is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And on my truck, on the truck I drove, AEV made the rims too. So they're like 35-inch tires on AEV rims that say both GMC and AEV on them. Yeah. And it's basically accessories, off-road accessories. Yeah, I think you can get like a light bar. My truck did not have that. I had the bed cover though. It's a whole bunch of cosplay for off-roading. If you want to look the part, this truck does it, and it does it in like the largest conceivable form factor.
But you can just buy AEV stuff, can't you?
Sure, but why do that when it's already in the showroom?
It doesn't look like you can buy AEV stuff.
AEV makes a ton of parts for a ton of vehicles. Like they're out there. Anyway, the whole reason I have this truck is because
I need to back up on this AEV thing. It bugs me a little bit because like I guess you can buy TRD stuff and you can buy like you can't and Mopar stuff.
But those are in-house brands. AEV is not an in-house brand. This is a collaboration. It's so funny to me
that they like just stamp it on everything. Just AEV. Everything is AEV right now.
Well, of course, because if you're that company, I mean, the whole reason you're collaborating with GMC is for the exposure, right?
Yeah. And so what is Chevy's like? What is Chevy's benefit from this? That, you know, like
Chevy doesn't have anything from it. It's GMC.
I mean, GMC's deal here is like, we love AEV. You're going to love AEV.
It's another way for them to sell more trucks. And at a higher profit point. The AEV package for the 2500 HD is $10,000.
Okay.
It comes with, I mentioned the bumpers, but it comes with additional skid plating. and those 18-inch rims. It's got, floor mats, which are molded to the interior, and they're designed to trap like mud and stuff so you don't get it on your carpets and whatnot. It's got a different, in addition to like the standard skid plates you get a transfer case skid plate and something called a mid skid plate, which is also under the transfer case. It's really funny because like both of them are, if you look at the description, it's stamped steel transfer case skid plate, stamped steel mid skid plate, and they're both underbody shields for the transfer case.
Wonderful. So you're getting double shielding here.
Yeah.
Basically, this vehicle should be invincible from underneath.
Yeah, you could like roll over a mine or like one of those graboids from Tremors, and you're probably...
Now we're talking. This is what AEV means. Like, this is what it should be about.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon's a big investor in AEV. So the whole reason I had this truck was not to take advantage of any of this off-road stuff. And that's going to seem a little bit obtuse if you're like, Benjamin, why are you specifically booking a pickup that does all this off-roading whatever, and now you're going to talk about how the off-roading stuff got in the way of what you wanted to actually do with the truck? Because what I wanted to do with the truck was tow my race car to Watkins Glen, which is an 8-hour trip each way. It's the kind of trip where I need a vehicle that's reliable, a vehicle that is going to be comfortable, and one that won't have any issues with towing. So it's generally, last time I did this last year, I took an F-250, a base F-250, well, not base, but very close to base, with the Minizilla engine, which is I think the 6.6 or 6.4 liter version of the 7.3 or whatever it is Godzilla V8 they have. It's a gas engine.
Is that an official name, the Minizilla?
Yeah, it's the Minizilla, because the full-size V8 from Ford in the Super Duty trucks is called the Godzilla. So then there's the Minizilla, which is the same engine, just slightly less displacement.
Do you think they have to pay licensing fees for that?
I think that they're fighting it in court on a daily basis. And probably going through. But I specifically...
With who? With Nissan or with...
Why would Nissan own the trademark to Godzilla?
Isn't that what they call the GTR?
You know what? Not in any official capacity. In any case, back to the truck we're talking about.
Right. There's no Zillas in GM's lineup.
No. So the reason that I was curious about this truck is because I think that I thought initially that all of this off-road gear was going to get in the way of towing, because there's a bunch of stuff about the AEV and the AT4X package that might work in an off-road environment, but it's just going to be inconvenient when you're trying to tow a simple trailer. And the trailer I'm towing was simple. I mean, it was an aluminum trailer with my Datsun on it. Together, it weighs around 4,000 pounds. The towing capacity of the AT4X is 18,400 pounds. So I'm not even at 1/3 of its maximum capacity. I'm not going to be working this truck all that hard.
You don't even need it. You don't need a 2,500 for this.
Absolutely not. But when you look around for vehicles to tow with in the press fleets, you often find these HD trucks are available because the fuel mileage is so terrible.
Yeah, I was going to say, the car, the way it uses fuel is like with no regard for a wallet.
Yeah,
I mean, basically.
So this vehicle has a 6.6 liter turbo diesel V8 engine matched to a 10-speed Allison transmission. And it generates 470 horsepower and 975 pound-feet of torque.
Wow.
And so as I understand it, Sammy, the vehicle's redesigned for this year. Is that correct? The 2024?
I believe so, yeah.
And part of that is...
I thought it's a 2025 model year redesign, I think.
I don't think so. Let me check.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Because
I think 24 is the first HD ATX, AT4X. But I think they got an update in 25 as well. Or at least the Silverado did.
You're incorrect. It is 2024 is the update for that. Because remember, the HDs and the regular pickups are not on the same production cycle.
Right. Okay, my mistake.
So it's redesigned, refreshed, whatever you want to call it. The way that GMC puts it, the things that, aside from aesthetics, what really counts in the towing department is they did a lot of work to the engine, specifically the heads, to change how it breathes, and they improved the cooling overall in the block.
Okay.
And they managed to push the 975 pound-feet of torque down as low as they could. I think it's below 1,600 RPM or 1,400 RPM. Right in there is where max torque comes on. So for my purposes, I mean, that's neither here nor there. Having nearly 1,000 pound-feet of torque is massive overkill for what I'm doing. But those are the important details of this truck. And because the engine is that big, and because I believe this vehicle weighs something like 8,000 or 9,000 pounds.
Okay.
The fuel mileage is not very good. So they're always available in the fleet, which is good for people like me who actually drive these trucks and do what these trucks are designed to do. But as I mentioned, my whole gambit is I don't think this truck is as good at what it is designed to do anymore, because it's being compromised by adding a skill set that is kind of at cross purposes to its original intent. So you get this HD truck, which is designed to tow, do work, whatever. And then you add like an 1.5 inch lift plus the height difference of the 35-inch tires. And all of a sudden you have this big vehicle that's even bigger and harder to deal with in the real world. I'm going to give you 2 examples of the trouble I had with this truck while I was just trying to tow a 20-foot trailer. The first was I could not get the trailer up tall enough to hitch it to the tow hitch I had installed in the pickup. And the tow hitch I have is a 2-inch drop hitch that drops the ball 2 inches below the bumper.
Oh, okay.
So already I'm going lower, and it wasn't enough. I had to take 30 pounds of air out of each of the rear tires to lower the truck enough where I could almost line it up with the tongue on my trailer. And then I had to physically lift the trailer and put it over the ball in order to get it on. That is crazy.
That's more work than usually required. Yeah.
Now, you can buy hitches that drop even more than that. You can buy adjustable height hitches. There's all sorts of options out there. And the idea,
I imagine anyone picking up a 2500 has to do. I mean, a modern 2500 or HD has to have one of these.
No, but Sammy, you're missing the point. The problem isn't that it's an HD, because I towed with the Ford HD last year and I had no issues. The problem is it's an AT4X, which has an 1.5 inch suspension lift plus the lift of the tires.
Okay, so
the problem is the off-road gear.
Yeah, it's off-road stuff. But these are becoming so much more common. I mean, the AT4 and the AT4X aren't the only HD pickups with this kind of equipment. As you mentioned, there's the Tremor. We talked about the Rebel and the Power Wagon. It seems like this is a thing that they're trying to push.
Of course, because it makes the money. As we mentioned, it's a $10,000 option.
And will mangle one of the important use case scenarios of an HD truck.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I think that for a half-ton truck, it's not as big of an issue. But for a truck that is specifically aimed at mostly at commercial buyers, it does seem weird that they're making this a problem. The reason you want a drop hitch in the first place isn't necessarily to compensate for your gigantic truck, but because it's better to tow a trailer when it's level. It's just better weight distribution. There's less stress on the tongue. There's less stress on the hitch. In my case, once I had it on there and I had aired the tires back up, the angle was not that huge. But in order to take it on and put it off in the future, I had to put a block of wood underneath the trailer jack. And since the trailer jack is on a wheel, it's inherently less stable. So I didn't appreciate that. It was a problem.
So everything was like dicey, basically on your end.
Yeah,
right?
it's dicey. I had to improvise, and maybe if I was on a slope in the other direction or more level ground, I wouldn't have had that problem. But the reality of the world is you can't always choose where you're hitching up or removing your trailer. Right. You're going to do it where there's space to do it. And sometimes it's not going to be a perfectly flat level ground. So all these things work together to make it a hassle. The bigger problem I had with the truck is the sheer size and bulk of it makes it very difficult to tow a trailer anywhere other than wide open spaces. In my driveway, I live out in the country.
Yeah, you have a bit of space.
Yeah, but my driveway has, shrubs and trees on either side, and I have a little bit of a kink that I have to get around to park beside my garage. So pulling the trailer out from the garage, I was able to do that. It wasn't too much of a problem. Backing it in, I could not get around the corner. I just did not have enough space. I trampled a bunch of my flowers and plants. It made me upset. Gigantic wheels on the truck did not help. Those tires are super wide and they were, causing a lot of problems. The huge length of the truck itself is also an issue. I tried for 40 minutes, Sammy, to back this trailer up. It was getting darker and darker. What I eventually had to do was go back out on the road, drop the trailer on the street, not on the dirt road, in front of my house, take my Jeep, attach my Jeep to the trailer, and then back it in with the Jeep. And it took me one try with the Jeep. One try. And let me mention the fact that the Jeep has no cameras, no sensors whatsoever.
I can't believe that. I mean, even with all these cameras, all these like doodads, no technology in this Jeep made it significantly. Yeah.
Because the wheelbase of the Jeep is much shorter and the overall length is much shorter, which, you know, is a detriment in some ways. But when it comes to maneuverability, is a lot easier with the trailer. I do want to shout out some of the cameras that were available with the some of the cameras that were available with the HD truck, because I had something called the Pro Grade Trailer Package, which it includes a bunch of features, including there's 15 different camera angles. I'm not exaggerating, that you can look at around the truck.
15.
The most useful one is the one on the hitch, which shows you if you're lined up with the trailer tongue, which was pretty useful. Although I have to say, my dad's Ford F-150 has the same feature, and it actually works better. You get a better angle. It's less of a top-down look, and more of a straight on with the trailer, which I find more helpful.
More useful, yeah.
But you can generally get a good idea of the area around the pickup with these cameras. There's also a feature where if you're towing an enclosed trailer, you can put a camera on the back of the trailer wirelessly, connect it to the system, and then it's called a transparent trailer, where the monitor will show you the area behind the truck as though the trailer was invisible.
Yeah.
And that's a useful feature.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't need that with my open trailer because you can see behind the truck with the
I want to talk about this feature as well because it's a really neat feature, but you need to invest in it, right? Like you need to get that auxiliary camera is not free.
Sure, but this is a truck that starts at $103,000
so, in
the US and $123,000 in Canada.
How much is that camera then? It's like $100 or $200 at most.
Yeah, at that point, it's really just more money set on fire.
I guess so. Okay, fine. You got me.
Even with the presence of these cameras, when I was towing, I used the mirrors and looked behind me more often than I used the actual cameras. Where I found myself using the cameras was even unloaded, I had difficulty getting this truck in and out of my driveway because of how wide it is. And I had to use the top-down camera so I could see where the wheels were in relation to the asphalt versus the plants. Right. It was the only real way because from the driver's seat, you can't see the wheels of the truck. At all. Yeah. And
did you find this more difficult in this HD compared to the Super Duty or the Ram 2500?
Because it's taller.
Because of this AEV stuff, this AT4X stuff.
Yes, and the further to this issue, one more thing where I'm going to ding the AT4X for its size. When my wife stands in front of the truck, I can't see her. That's how tall it is. That is dangerous.
Okay. Yeah.
The last time I had a truck where that was a significant problem at the same level was the Ram TRX. So trucks are just too big. There's no need for this truck to be this big. As I mentioned, I drove the same route last year with an F-250 and had no problems. And that truck felt smaller, even though they're probably close dimensionally. It didn't have all the off-road gear bulking it up even further. And it felt much more manageable. And that truck I drove in Montreal, in the city.
Yeah.
Where there's even less space. And I found it to be more manageable. Now that I've kind of dinged the truck for all the things I didn't like, I do have to say that the engine is absurdly powerful.
I mean, with 900 pound-feet of torque, 975 pound-feet of torque, you better feel that thing. And 10 gears to deal with. You better feel that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Allison transmission also comes with the vehicle also comes with a transmission brake, which worked. I didn't really need it. The truck's not heavy enough. It only came on a couple of times, and that was usually when I was on a secondary road. Where the angle of descent was a lot steeper than what you would find on an interstate. Okay. I drove 900 miles in total with the truck, which I think is a pretty good distance, like 1,400, 1,500 kilometers, a pretty good distance to evaluate it. The power was crazy. I could easily walk my dad's F-150. There were times where he talked about how I would just pull away from him up a hill, or if I needed to pass someone. He's towing about 6,000 pounds, and he has the 5-liter V8, which is around, I guess, 400 horsepower in that application, and similar amounts of torque. And the difference is astounding in terms of power. And I found that the DSSV shocks were really, really good at dealing with broken pavement. And I'm going to give you a fairly extreme example of the situation that made me realize this truck has a suspension system that's, over and above what you would get in a normal HD truck. So the one aspect of the AT4X package that I like is this DSSV suspension. It's the spool valve shock absorbers. They're found on the ZR2. They're made by Multimatic, which is a Canadian company that makes race cars and whatnot. And we've talked about DSSV many times in the past. But I was going down the interstate at about 73 miles an hour with the cruise control on. And there was a bridge, just a short bridge, that apparently had a pothole in it that I didn't see. Not only did I not see the pothole, I didn't feel the pothole when I went over it. But the trailer moved so much that something flew off of the trailer. And my dad came on the radio and he's like, "You just lost something off the trailer." Uh-oh. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You just hit a bump on that bridge and something came off the trailer." I'm like, "I did not feel anything." I looked in the mirror. Everything seems to be on the trailer. And the thing about the trailer is it doesn't have like small pieces that can come off.
Yeah.
Or so I thought.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what we need to do. He's like, "I avoided whatever it was. And so did the person in the other lane." I'm like, okay, that's good. Let's take the next exit and I'll inspect the trailer. So we get off at the exit. It's a gas station. I'm doing a walk around on the trailer. I'm checking the ramps. I'm checking the car in case like a piece of the car flew off. I can't see anything that's come off at all. Everything is still tight on the straps. So it's very strange. I'm like, oh, maybe we just ran over some junk. Maybe there was something on the road and it got kicked up. I go inside. I get a sandwich. Delicious sandwich, Sammy. Let me tell you. It was like it was like an Italian sandwich, capicola on it. Pretty good for a gas station sandwich. While I'm at the gas station, bunch of Mennonites pull up in a buggy. Half of them are in a buggy. Half of them are in a Dodge Journey. I can't tell who was more comfortable. Okay. I get back to the car and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do another walk around. So I do a second walk around and I realize that there are two, the trailer has two toolboxes that are attached to it at the back. They're accessory toolboxes. One of the lids is completely gone. Like it's just got, it's maybe 2 feet by 9 inches. Or maybe
the
10
lid
inches
of a toolbox
of a
missing.
Steel toolbox gone. I checked the latch. It's still locked. What happened was the hinges failed on it.
What the?
I hit the bump. The hinges failed. It flew up in the air and was gone. It didn't hit my car somehow, even though it's directly beside the Datsun. It didn't hit my dad. He was far enough away, and it didn't hit anyone else. So I'm borrowing this trailer from a friend of mine, and I call him up and I'm like, I'm really sorry about this trailer. I actually didn't call him initially. I texted him. I'm like, "Hey, I owe you a toolbox lid." And he's like, "Which side?" And I'm like, "Right side." And he's like, "Don't worry about it. There's a story about that." And I'm like, "I'll call you later." I'm like, "Okay." So he calls me. He's like, "I lent this trailer to another friend earlier in the year, and he lost the keys to the everything. And so he had to rekey all of the aspects of the trailer. But he thinks that when his friend rekeyed it, they drilled the hinges on that toolbox and replaced them with different hinges. And it's been a problem ever since. So he thinks that it was just too weak and it failed in that way. Anyway.
Okay, so you're safe. You're okay. You didn't ruin your friend's
No, but
toolbox.
This is a very long story to say I hit a bump hard enough to tear a piece of steel off of a toolbox and I didn't even feel it inside the truck. The last year when I had that F-250, it was not nearly as comfortable in terms of load. Like it was bouncing. I felt pretty much every vibration out there and it was very sensitive to rough pavement.
Okay. So, but usually, what's the word I'm looking for? Like tow-oriented vehicles tend to have, I think, stiffer suspension to deal with the added weight over the rear on the rear end. That's accommodating a trailer, a heavy trailer that's dealing with a max rating of what, like 100 bajillion pounds.
Yeah, but adding the DSSV shocks allows you to have that stiff suspension without necessarily compromising comfort in the same way as like.
I think DSSV is magic. Like I think it's the best. It
really is. No, it really is
the best thing on the planet. I don't know how they're only been used like this. Like this is the best application of DSSV, I think. Right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, the ZR2 is also very good.
Right. That's what I mean. In pickup truck form, like in terms of its ability to be so versatile, is only possible by these DSSV shocks. And then that we haven't seen on anything else? It must be very expensive.
Well, it was on the Z28 Camaro, which I never drove, so I don't know.
That's right.
I don't.
That was a very rare vehicle, right?
Yes,
like
it was the first application of the technology on the street, from what I recall.
Right.
I want to say that was like 2014 or 2015, something like that.
That's a sick car. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, in any case, I really like that about the truck. And the other things about the truck that were cool, it has a whole bunch of that pro-grade trailering thing that I talked to you about. It's like a software suite that comes within the infotainment system, and you can add individual trailer profiles, and like it will tell you how long you've spent towing an individual trailer. It will tell you your fuel mileage for that trailer. Like I did 12.2 miles per gallon, which I think is like 18 liters per 100 kilometers, something like that.
That's not good.
While I was towing.
Not good.
Yeah, but I mean, there are trucks that will tow a lot, that will give you a lot worse fuel efficiency while towing.
Okay.
You know, and won't have nearly the same amount of power, right?
Okay.
It also includes a checklist that you can go through every time you leave. So like you can make sure you did all your connections properly.
I like that. That's smart.
It is smart. And it's useful, like even for people who tow semi-regularly like me. I was unplugging the trailer lights at night because there was a situation where I don't know why, when I plugged into the GMC, I would get flickering at the back of the truck when the truck was at the back of the trailer when the truck was off. When the truck was on, I never had any problems. So I would just unplug it. And sometimes I would forget to plug it in. And you can set it up to remind you to plug the lights in. You can set it up to remind you to do a check beforehand. You can set it up to remind you to turn the transmission into tow haul mode. These are all really useful things. The other thing that's cool is it'll do a light test on your trailer. So you can push a button and then just stand at the back and watch all of the lights come on sequentially. Make sure they all work instead of having a friend hit the brakes or the turn signals and all that. And you can,
it means that you can do it without having to. First of all, it takes so much time out of, and like tedium out of the process. I love that. I think that's really handy.
Exactly. And the final thing that was neat about the whole trailering setup is if you have it in tow haul mode and turn the truck off, it will remember that you were in tow haul mode for 4 hours.
Okay.
Which is great because if you stop to get gas or stop to eat lunch and come back out, you don't have to put the thing back in, or you don't get on the highway and you're like, oh, why isn't it shifting in the way I expect it to? And then look down and see you're not in tow haul mode. The only thing it doesn't automatically turn back on is the diesel brake.
Okay.
And I get that. That's probably something you're only going to want to use with a really heavy load. So that was pretty cool. There's some weird stuff in the truck though, Sammy.
Like what? What are you talking about?
So like there's, the GMC loves to put, I will say this, as much as the infotainment system is large and includes a lot of functionality on this truck, there are a ton of physical buttons as well. And there's a whole row of physical buttons on the center console that include things like locking the rear differential, turning on the diesel brake, parking assistance, all that stuff. There's also a button in the center console in that row that will put all of the windows down.
What?
That's all it does.
I'm looking for these buttons. Oh, it's on the set. Where is this located?
There's a row of switches on the center console. Like,
okay, yeah.
It puts all the windows down, but it doesn't put them up. Like it's a one-use button. If you want to put them up,
these are one-way buttons. They only press down, or they
only push
they don't
down.
toggle back up.
They don't toggle back up. So you have to manually You have to access the switches individually on the driver's door to put them back up. Which I thought was kind of.
What is that for? For like,
I have no idea.
In the car?
Absolutely. I don't. Yeah, if there's a bad stink, it's like an automatic evac. But
yeah,
Sammy, you would think that it would also like open the sunroof at the same time and the back window. It doesn't open any of those.
So just the 4 windows. That's
just the 4 windows. Yeah.
Not the back window either.
No, super weird. The other thing I want to say about the truck's cabin, very comfortable. Very, very comfortable.
It's huge. Like the space. I was looking at the back seat space. I think that's bigger than most sedans or SUVs.
Oh yeah, it was. I had all of my track gear back there, like jacks and my racing box, which has all my supplies, brake fluid, all that kind of stuff. Plus all of my overnight stuff. Plus the pillow I travel with because I'm a precious person who needs their own pillow in a motel. I think that's a luxury I allow myself.
Okay.
There was tons of space. It was quite useful. I had a cooler back there. It was great. It's really, a total command center of a vehicle, but it's just infuriatingly large and extremely expensive. And I think summing it up, I feel like adding the off-road gear with the exception of the DSSV shocks, is at cross purposes to the heavy duty mission statement of a pickup truck like this. I think you actually detract from your ability to get the job done. And I feel like it's aimed at people who want a truck that does everything. And like maybe they're contractors, they can afford one truck. They like going off-road on weekends, and they're like, I'm going to get one truck that lets me, get the job done during the week, and then I can go out on a trail and have fun on the weekend. But the problems with that are it's going to cause problems on the job site unless, well, I'm going to qualify that statement. I think on many job sites, it will be fine because you'll have a large open area to work in. If that's the kind of work you do, that's the kind of construction that you're doing, where you're towing like 18,000 pound trailers, which generally need larger spaces to begin with and go from one large space to another, you probably won't have a problem. But if you're expecting some civilian use out of this truck, it's huge overkill. And then when you get to the trail on the weekend, you're in a giant truck that's going to have trouble fitting down narrow areas or turning around tight corners and stuff. Like full-size pickups are not great off-road because of how big they become, and heavy-duty trucks just compound that problem.
This is kind of like a dune bashing kind of car, I guess, because that's the open space like that you would find in deserts and dunes and stuff like that.
But do you really want to jump on like a 9,000 pound truck? That feels like asking for like the worst possible frame damage,
Yeah, of course. I mean, to me, a 2500 or HD pickup truck has a specific purpose of towing like a house, like a huge product, like something massive, or hauling a lot of stuff in the bed. The off-roading aspect of it to me is so, what's the word I'm looking for? You said like it's contradictory. I'm not even sure that's right. Like I don't think it's that's a different product. It is a different vehicle to go off-roading. And then the other aspect that I want to bring up is that the standard duty trucks, the 1500s and the F-150s, have gotten so much better capability-wise in terms of towing and hauling, that their off-road models could probably do the trick unless you really need that much.
But I think
900 pound-feet of torque is overkill, man.
I think even those off-road models are going to be overkill. I think off-road models for towing are overkill across the board. I just think maybe it's worse when you get to the 2500 section.
Yeah. This is a jumbled product as a result. I think it's
jumbled
bizarre.
is a great way. Jumbled is a great word to use it. And we look at how this off-road thing has infected the industry, where now
it's insane. Yeah.
We have problems at like the largest possible slice of the automotive industry, and we have problems at the smallest possible slice, where we have all these crossovers that are being given, off-road stuff that all those roof racks and crossover bars and extra ride height has got to be
the AT tires is awful on fuel economy, right?
Exactly. So you're compromising why people are choosing small vehicles, and you're compromising on why people are choosing large vehicles. And it's like, yeah, there's happy mediums out there. There are some off-road packages that are good. Like I think that, the ZR2 for like the Colorado is a great example of a truck that's right sized for the job.
Do they still make you get a spare tire holder in the bed of that truck?
No, I think that's only for, again, the Bison, which I think is put together by AEV. I think that's a partnership with AEV.
Okay.
But you can't paint everything with the same brush and achieve a great result. Like you have to compensate for the canvas you're working on.
It reminds me of when we first got the Gladiator, the Jeep Gladiator, which is a fairly large mid-size pickup truck, I think, with a small bed, but like really like class above off-road capabilities, with the exception of the ZR2 that we just mentioned. And we struggled to see why somebody would want something like this, because it's compromised in so many different ways. And now we're going to the next class of, not even the next class, 2 classes above that, and we're still having the same complaints, right?
Yeah. It's just magnified.
It's a flawed design, I think.
And everything about it is magnified, from the dimensions to the price to the expectations, and
just the usage experience. If you can't see somebody in front of the vehicle, something ain't right. Like, that's not right.
So I think, part of this is me. Part of this is I'm not a contractor. I'm using this to tow a very modest load. It is not the best tool for the job. It is overkill for that job. But also, I'm someone who lives way out in the country, and I should be able to drive around in an HD truck without
Absolutely,
it being a hassle. But
Absolutely.
it is a hassle in almost every situation, which is why I think the idea of this truck also being a daily driver, which is what the AT4X package suggests, like that this is going to be used recreationally, is just not a good one. I think it's
really a turnoff.
You really need to stop and think twice before spending this much money, because the compromises are going to frustrate you.
We have to do a piece, like an episode that is, or a story on the actual like compromises that are worth it in the off-road branding or packaging, right? Like, yeah. I mean, many, like we mentioned, like these like a Land Cruiser doesn't have more ground clearance than a Subaru, but like a TRD Pro, what's it called? Tacoma or Tundra. Those are two different products, right?
Yeah.
And what they're capable of doing and how much more you're getting for it and how it impacts the rest of the functionality of the vehicle. Because I've seen these new Tacomas with these like suspension in the seats. Have you seen this?
No.
There's a version of the Tacoma TRD which has these like seats with suspension in them. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm sure there's a better term for it.
When I was a kid, my dad would so my family had a sawmill, and my father would occasionally drive the 10-wheel truck for the sawmill. And you know, when he was younger, he drove it more often, but when I came around, he wasn't driving it as much. And sometimes I would go with him. And this is like a giant Ford 8000 with you know, a huge load of wood or wood chips or whatever. And they had like, it was funny because one of the trucks at the company had air seats on both sides, and one of them had air seats just like on the driver's side.
Yeah.
So like when you're in the air seat in like one of these giant 10-wheelers, you're kind of like bouncing around and stuff, but it's not a bouncing where you're hitting a bump. It's just like a bouncing where you're riding on a cushion of air. And then like on the other side, when you're just the passenger,
it's flying, it's catching
you're like
air,
bumping everywhere, you know?
Okay.
But that was my first experience with suspension in the seats.
So now, like these seats, it's in the Tacoma TRD Pro, and they've got this like suspension on the back of the seats, and I think you can adjust it. I'm not totally sure.
Can your passengers adjust it?
But it impacts the rear seat space so dramatically that it again basically makes what was a fairly practical or like multi-use vehicle, it really strips away one of the functions of it. I just sent you a photo in our chat about or a whole story about this.
Oh wow, and I think this is absurd. This is like the gaming chair of pickup truck seats. You know how like when you get gaming chairs for video games and they have all those extraneous like plastic pieces and like a spine on them and stuff?
Yeah.
This is exactly like that, except even more so. Is it carbon fiber or is it just plastic that's supposed to look like carbon fiber? Like Sammy has really not sold what these look like. There are two exposed pistons? ?
Yeah. It's called the isodynamic performance seat, which is again very PC gaming of Toyota to call it this.
It's a seat you get if you only have one friend who goes off-roading with you because there's no room for anyone else.
Air over oil shock absorber system on a seat.
So what you're saying is I could be jumping my pickup truck, land my pickup truck, and have oil explode all over the interior of my pickup truck?
Yeah,
sign me up for that.
Only you and maybe your front passenger if you have one with you there.
Oh no, it's definitely going over the back passengers. I mean, look at how this is.
I know, that's what I mean.
Sign me up for paying more for this, please.
That's what I'm saying though, is that these are features that are like, say what? Like who wants this and is willing to compromise a perfectly functional vehicle like a Tacoma that has 4 doors, 4 seats, and can haul people? That imagine you're sitting that and you see these shocks in front of you, right?
Yeah, this is like the kind of thing you would install in your truck if you were racing the Baja 1000.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's actually 4 shock absorbers. Did you say that?
Yeah, I did. Didn't I say that there's shocks on these seats?
There's 4 of them.
Yes.
There are 2 quote-unquote main shocks for vertical movement and 2 for lateral movement. How many shocks are necessary? I'm going to posit that 0 shocks are necessary in a production truck seat. I'm just going to put that out there.
But this is what I mean, is that these things have gone overboard and have impacted the usability of the vehicle, and
This is
people
wild.
are paying more for them.
This is from a year ago. How did I not hear about this?
This is real, man.
I know it's real. It's terrifyingly real.
And is causing a trend. Like, is you think this is the last time we're going to see something like this?
I hope so, but I mean,
I don't think so.
this is like Rolls-Royce bespoke levels of weirdness inside your vehicle, where they're like, "Do you want lambskin or lamb's wool carpets and stuff?" And you're like, "Yeah, okay." And then like, "Do you want 4 shock absorbers in every seat?" And you're like, "Okay." And then like, "Do you want a fish tank in your center console?" Like, where does it end?
That's fair. Fair.
Do you want hydraulics for your fish tank so that the fish are not jostled? I mean, it doesn't stop.
Okay. Now that we're done talking about these things, I want to hear a little bit about more your track experience that you took this 2500 out there
Sammy,
for.
it was not good.
What do you mean it was not good? Are you okay? Are you safe? Is everyone?
I love Watkins Glen. It's one of my favorite tracks. It is the site of the original U.S. Grand Prix. I think from the 60s to 1970 or maybe early 70s. It's a Formula One style track, but from the old school where there's like not necessarily enough runoff for them to use it.
61 to 1980 is what I understand.
Okay. And it flows incredibly well. It's currently used by a bunch of professional series, including NASCAR. They drive a sort of modified version of the track that's a little bit shorter than what we were using. But it's a very fast track that's not scary, which is a rarity.
It's very rare, yeah.
Especially when you're talking about tracks that were designed like this. Watkins Glen has been hosting sports car racing and Grand Prix racing for, I don't know, 100 years. Like they were this is one of the areas of the US where they would race on the streets and the roads, and then they would make a circuit out of that, like they did in Europe. That was a very popular way to run races back then. There's this place. There's also Road America in Wisconsin, which is a similar kind of thing. And eventually they moved the track to where it is now and made it permanent. But it was designed with the same kind of mentality, where like you want it to reflect the topography of the area, what the roads are like in upstate New York. And in this particular Watkins Glen, it's very hilly. So there's a lot of elevation changes. And sometimes when you do a track like that, or when you have a very large, very fast track, it can be terrifying. Most Sport is a great example. The back straight at Most Sport, and actually a couple of the straights at Most Sport that aren't even as long as the back straight, are scary because of how fast you can go and the rather abrupt change in direction that results from that. But at Watkins Glen, there's
the altitude. Not altitude? No, the change of
elevation change.
Elevation, sorry. I shouldn't have said altitude. I sound like a moron there. Yeah, elevation change.
Yeah, so it's a track that flows very well. In my car, I hit my maximum speed there, which is about 105 miles an hour. I actually have to shift into 5th gear to keep the revs at a reasonable level.
Yeah.
And my dad's car is, going a lot faster at that point, because he has the Mustang with the V8 and whatnot, twice the horsepower that I have. So it's a track that rewards power, but it's a track that also has some challenging technical aspects. So I went out for my first session. Everything went fine. Car drove well. I'm trying new tires. They're these Nankang. I think they're CRSs instead of the Nitto and T01 I usually run. This is my second session with those tires, my second track day with those tires, and out of the box, I was able to match my early morning, at least one, a decent set. I was running like 2:30, which is a match for my early morning times with the Nittos. Then I didn't know how much gas was in the car. I left the track. I went to a Citgo station in town and I filled up 6 gallons of gas. So it was like 24 liters. Came back to the track. I went out for my second session and the car started sputtering. I would get to like 5,000 RPM, between 5,000 and 6,000 RPM. It would sputter and I would lose power. And normally when something like that happens, it's because of a fueling issue. Like you're going in a corner and it's cutting fuel to the fuel pump, something like that. But it was happening like even on the straights. I came in, I looked under the hood and I was trying to figure out, it was idling fine. It was driving fine at speeds under that, engine speeds under that. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I saw that there was a hose clamp that had come loose on the hose. Sorry, not really a hose, but like a rubber sleeve that connects my airflow monitor to the intake. And I thought maybe extra air was getting in there. I thought it had torn. It turns out I tried taping it up. It didn't fix it. I realized it hadn't torn. It was just loose. So I was able to use the hose clamp, get everything together. Still didn't fix it. At this point, I don't know what's going. It's like I've missed 2 sessions. There's usually 5 during the day. Yeah. I've driven 8 hours to get there. I can't drive the car because I can't risk the fact that I've either had too much air go into the engine and it's leaning it out, or that the fuel pump is clogged or the fuel filter is clogged and I'm not getting enough fuel and that's going to lean it out and, you know, possibly cook the top of the pistons or a valve, burn a valve. So I ended up driving Dad's car for the last session of the day. I got 2 sessions out of 5. Very expensive trip and very long trip to go. I had a lot of fun with my dad hanging out, and his car was fun. I came into the pits. I managed to do a second better than my best ever time at Watkins Glen in my car, driving his car. I ran a 124, and it's my first time driving his car at that track. There's definitely more power, more time left in his car, and his car is so much fun on a track like that. Like, and it handles really well. There's a section of the track called the bus stop, which is like a lump that is designed. It's like a chicane almost to kind of slow you down at the top of there's an uphill S section that leads to a long straight. And then there's the bus stop before you go into a really sharp downhill corner. And in his car, I could take the bus stop nearly as quickly, if not quicker, than in my Datsun, which weighs like 1,000 pounds less. I was very impressed by that. But when I got to the pits, we're looking at I ran out of fuel in his car.
Oh, wow.
He had only put in enough. We thought we had enough for one more session. I was sputtering with my last lap in a different way. And this time I could tell it was fuel. So I coasted in, put it on the trailer, and I could see that his left front brake rotor is cracked. And I'm like, all right, we stopped this at exactly the right time. And I had been thinking while I was driving how much better his brakes were than mine, because I have like single piston brakes and they work fine because the car is light, but the pedal feel is not great. And the bite is not very good. And now I'm starting to think like maybe I should do something about that. But I have whatever this engine issue is to diagnose. And I managed to open the hood of my car into the crossbar of the trailer without even thinking and crease the hood. And I felt so stupid. And I've been beating myself up for a full week about that.
I'm sorry that happened.
So anyway,
I mean, when you're dealing with, you know, the unknown with your vehicle, I think, you know, certain things take precedent. Like there's a priority in which you do things. And I guess, of course, you wanted to see the car before you dealt with the surroundings of the trailer. I mean, I get it.
No, I popped. The reason the hood got creased is because after I loaded it to leave, the hood was popped. And sometimes that happens. The latch sometimes pops. And I was like, I'm going to check and see if I have tools underneath. And I just lifted it up. And I'm not used to a trailer with a crossbar, and I slammed right into it. So now I have like an 8-inch crease in the hood, which is probably not repairable. So that sucks. Anyway, the car needs significant bodywork. I'm at the point where there's enough corrosion on the vehicle that I have to do something about it on the door bottoms and the backs of the fenders and underneath the hatch. I'm at the risk of losing the car because of the corrosion going too far, but that's a very big expense. Yeah. And there's a lot of things going on in my life that don't allow me to spend that money right now. So it's kind of stressful.
I understand, of course. But, you know, first of all, you've got that other one. Your Cadillac's a monster,
but I'm not taking my Cadillac to a track like Watkins Glen. It's far too scary, and I don't have the kind of tires on it that would make it safe to do that.
That's fair.
Like, I'm running street tires on it, and I don't run street tires on the track anymore, and it's a very different experience.
Oh, it's huge. It's like night and day. I don't think people get that. We need to say that more and more, that these like track tires are brilliant. Like they're magic too. Like we talk DSSV magic. I think track tires can be like magic too.
And you just have to completely recalculate how you approach every corner, because it affects not just handling, but seriously affects braking. And your brake points automatically change. You know, recalibrating your brake points when moving to a more aggressive tire is one of the biggest challenges, because not only is physics involved, but there's the mental aspect of it, because you're going to be braking deeper into the corner than you used to. And you have to get past that point of your brain that says, this is scary, we're going to die.
Right. Yeah.
Because you have the grip, but you know that intellectually, but emotionally you don't know that.
Anything else you want to talk about this week? First of all, thank you for sharing that experience.
Yeah, that really sad story. No, I think I've talked your ear off, Sammy.
I love it. Why not? This is the whole point of the podcast. I mean, we built this podcast because we enjoyed talking to each other.
And, for that community service we had to do.
That's fair. And we just liked, talking about what goes on in our lives and what we're doing in our industry and sharing that with other people who might be interested in it. So if that is you, dear listener, if that is you, I really would encourage you to get in touch with us. We love hearing from our listeners, either just saying hi or giving us some feedback or asking us questions. Do you want to hear about our thoughts on whatever the latest news in the industry is? Just send us a question. The easiest way to do that is to head on over to our website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. There's a contact form there. You just fill that out and it lands in our inbox. If you want to forego that form and just land in our inbox the old-fashioned way, the email address is benjamin@benjaminhunting.com, or you can reach out to us on social media, specifically Instagram. You can find Benjamin there. He's at huntingbenjamin, or you can find me. I'm at Sammy_ha, like you're laughing.
And Sammy, what are we going to be talking about next week?
I've got another EV to talk about next week. Another EV that's from General Motors, but with a different brand on it. This is the Acura ZDX.
Sammy, is General Motors' entire business model now just AT4X pickups and selling other companies' EVs?
Yeah, I suppose so. We'll see. I don't know if this is a business to them, but we'll see.
It's just more of a hobby.
Yeah. What about you? What are you driving?
I'm driving an EV as well, but something very different. It's the BMW i7, but it's the M70. And this is the high-performance version of the largest electric sedan BMW offers. So they take it pretty seriously.
Wow, that's a shot. Those are shots fired against every other EV automaker.
Make of that what you will, Sam.
Not taking things seriously. You're going to want to hear that. We'll be right back here on your podcast client next week, Sunday, usually, right?
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.